think in terms of creative methods, maybe it is also important to point out that my background, I have a creative background. I trained in architecture, so it's sort of been more my norm that I've approached social and sustainability sciences from. So it's not necessarily that I've come into this as a social scientist that has then looked towards creative methods as the sort of ultimate outcome. So I think it's important to also share that context as well. But of course, I have also realized that there is a really powerful combination between creative and social science methods. A quote that I often sort of refer to in lectures that I give about reflective creative practice is that art makes the familiar strange so that it can be freshly perceived. And actually this, so I often use sort of creative practice as this way of, sometimes I talk about making one step over into the metaphorical that actually gives a different perspective on the current present life that we're living in, that life that we are maybe so used to and sort of necessarily might not sort of question or critique or sort of reflect on, because it's just our day-to-day life that we've got to get through. For some people also, like that real practical necessity to work 3 jobs, to put food on the table, to try and make ends meet, does not create space in order to kind of critically reflect on the reality of what we're experiencing in life. So actually sort of creative sort of practice also for me, in my mind, sort of also offers this sort of some really great tools to create spaces in which we can sort of also sort of have these reflective kind of conversations as well. So actually in the example of the deep map that I was making in the double interview process that I talked about in the chapter, whereby first of all, sort of with the people I've been interviewing, we'd walk through the site together, and then I'd step away to my mountain of reflection and kind of pull out some key themes and create illustrations around those themes, including sort of excerpts from what those people had said. And then I'd sort of present those back to the participants in that second round of interview when we'd sit in the studio. And essentially that sort of what I was creating were kind of like these sort of loose way markers, sort of wayfinding markers like you would have in a landscape around someone's narrative. So kind of having some wayfinding markers sort of allowed us to sort of, those people to kind of actually position those markers, actually in relation to one another, talk about the space in between. And also I also really sort of tried to encourage people, like, please critique this. If you feel like this is not something that represents your narrative, absolutely, please, feedback, and, we can change it and we can edit it. So it kind of, that sort of creative making process sort of gives substance to have a conversation around. And I think also sort of as art production, is a necessary process. It also offers opportunities to be open-ended in that process as well. So it's sort of this continual sort of revising, shaping process, and it's this process that values the fact that that the creation of one thing will then bring up a whole new set of questions that then sort of generate a direction for the next step as well. There is that phase where I am on the mountain of reflection, where I'm not directly engaging sort of with, in contact with those people that I'm talking about. But that space also is full of responsibility to try and do my best to represent, knowing that I will also tentatively bring back what I create back into the field of conversation as well. But it has also been helpful for me to recognize that it is, it's not a bad thing to create space where I can get distance and where I can reflect as much as possible. Because I think earlier in my practice, I felt like all the creative thinking that I was doing, I needed to do it collectively together with the people that I was working with, which is also, that absolutely has its values and beneficial ways of working, and you know, is definitely valued in different settings. But actually being able to sort of step away and sort of step back allows me to sort of take that time to work out, you know, what can I give here? This is a two-way conversation that's going on. What can I give to this conversation? And what is, you know, that I am, you know, I have had the privilege to kind of go through a sort of creative arts-based training. How can I put that training into best use to be able to generate value in this context that I'm working in?